You just met someone, smiled, and instantly forgot their name again. You think this means you're bad with people, careless, or socially awkward. That's not entirely true. Forgetting names quickly often reveals something deeper about how your mind prioritizes, filters, and protects information under pressure. In this video, you'll uncover the hidden psychological patterns behind why names slip away so easily, and how this small habit quietly reflects your attention, memory wiring, and even your sense of identity. Most people assume remembering names is just about having a good memory, so they try harder, repeat the name once, and still forget it minutes later. That frustration isn't a failure of memory. It's a failure of attention. When you meet someone new, your brain isn't focused on their name. It's scanning their face, judging the situation, deciding how to present yourself, and managing subtle social anxiety. The name simply becomes background noise. Highly self-aware individuals approach this moment differently. They don't try to remember harder. Instead, they deliberately slow down their attention and treat the name as the most important detail in that first interaction. Think about it like this. Your brain is a spotlight, not a camera. It doesn't record everything equally. It highlights what feels important in the moment. If the name doesn't feel important, it doesn't get stored properly. This is why you can remember a random embarrassing moment from years ago, but forget someone's name in seconds. Emotion amplifies memory. Neutral information fades unless you consciously give it weight. Another pattern most people overlook is cognitive overload. When you're meeting someone, you're often juggling multiple thoughts at once. How do I look? What should I say next? Do they like me? In that mental noise, the name barely stands a chance. It's introduced once, without emotional context, and then immediately buried under layers of self-conscious thinking. People who seem naturally good with names aren't necessarily smarter. They're just quieter inside their own heads during those first few seconds. They create mental space for the name to land. They listen with intention instead of reacting with anxiety. That small shift changes everything. The brain encodes information better when it isn't distracted by internal dialogue. There's also a deeper psychological layer tied to identity. Names are abstract labels. They don't mean anything to you yet. Your brain prefers meaning over randomness. Until a name connects to a story, personality, or emotional impression, it remains weak in memory. It's like trying to remember a password with no pattern or significance. This is why you might forget John, but remember John, who told you that strange story about quitting his job to travel. The story creates anchors, the name alone does not. Most people make the mistake of treating names as isolated data. More self-aware individuals immediately link names to something vivid, unusual, or emotionally engaging. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Even a small association works. A facial feature, a tone of voice, or a unique detail can act as a mental hook for the name. But there's another reason you forget names that's harder to admit. Sometimes you don't fully value the interaction. Not consciously, but subtly. Your brain is efficient. It prioritizes what it believes will matter later. If it doesn't see long-term relevance, it doesn't invest energy in storing details like names. This doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. But it does reveal how selective your attention really is, even when you think you're being polite and engaged. Now here's where it gets interesting. The same mechanism that makes you forget names can also protect your mental energy. You're filtering out what feels unnecessary. But if left unchecked, this pattern can quietly damage your relationships. People feel remembered when their name is remembered. It signals presence, respect, and genuine attention. Forgetting names repeatedly can create an invisible distance between you and others, not because you don't care, but because your attention never fully landed in the moment. Let me ask you something. When someone tells you their name, are you truly listening, or are you already preparing what you'll say next? That question alone can change how you experience conversations. Awareness is the first shift. Without it, you keep repeating the same pattern without understanding why. There's also a subtle fear involved in many cases, the fear of getting it wrong. Ironically, this fear makes you avoid using the name, which prevents reinforcement. So the name fades even faster. You don't repeat it, you don't test it, and your brain assumes it wasn't important enough to keep. Confident communicators do the opposite. They use the name early, even if there's a small risk of being wrong. That repetition strengthens memory and signals engagement. Another overlooked factor is speed. Modern conversations move fast. Introductions are rushed. Names are mentioned once and never revisited. Your brain needs repetition and context to store information. Without those, even important details slip through the cracks. This is why slowing down slightly during introductions can have a huge impact. A simple pause, a brief acknowledgement, or repeating the name naturally can anchor it in your mind. But here's the darker side of this pattern. If you constantly operate on autopilot in social interactions, you start experiencing people as interchangeable. Names blur together, conversations feel shallow, and over time, your connections lose depth without you fully realizing why. This isn't about memory anymore, it's about presence. Forgetting names becomes a symptom of a deeper disconnect from the moment. On the other hand, becoming intentional with names can transform how people experience you. It makes interactions feel more personal, more grounded, and more real. The difference isn't intelligence, it's awareness applied in small, consistent ways. Another important point is emotional state. Stress and anxiety reduce your brain's ability to encode new information. When you're tense, your focus narrows. You're not thinking about remembering names, you're thinking about surviving the interaction, saying the right thing, or avoiding awkwardness. In that state, memory takes a back seat. This is why you might remember names better in relaxed environments than in formal or high-pressure situations. People who manage this well don't eliminate anxiety completely. They simply learn to anchor themselves in the present moment despite it. They focus outward instead of inward, on the person, not on their own performance. There's also a subtle habit that makes a big difference: curiosity. When you're genuinely curious about someone, your brain naturally pays more attention. Names become part of a larger interest in the person. They're no longer just labels, they're connected to a growing mental picture. Without curiosity, everything feels flat, and flat information is easily forgotten. But curiosity can't be faked for long. It has to be intentional, a choice to engage, even in small ways. Here's where control comes in. You don't need to transform your personality to remember names better. You just need to adjust a few key moments. The first few seconds of hearing a name, the first opportunity to repeat it, the first chance to connect it to something meaningful. Those moments decide whether the name stays or disappears. If you ignore them, forgetting becomes automatic. If you use them, remembering becomes natural. And this applies beyond names. It reflects how you handle attention in every part of your life. What you choose to notice, what you choose to ignore, what you decide is worth remembering. Your mind is constantly making those decisions, often without your awareness. The goal isn't perfection. You will still forget names sometimes. Everyone does. The goal is to reduce how often it happens by becoming more intentional with your attention. Here's a simple action step you can start using today. The next time you meet someone, pause for 1 second after hearing their name. Repeat it once in your head, then once out loud in a natural sentence. Attach it to one small detail you notice about them. That's it. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't try to memorize everything. Just focus on that single habit. Over time, it will rewire how you handle introductions. Names will start sticking without extra effort. And more importantly, Your presence in conversations will deepen. If this made you see your habits differently, subscribe and join a group of people learning how to think more consciously and interact with real intention. Because in the end, remembering a name isn't about memory at all. It's about deciding, in a quiet moment, that someone in front of you actually matters.